Morning, everyone. Glad to have all of you on this episode of the NASCOM Future of Work series. Over the past few months, we've been having conversations with thought leaders to understand GenAI's impact on various aspects of work. Today's episode is the first in the series that will explore how different technology segments, ranging from application development and infrastructure management, IoT products and platforms, all of this, how are these going to be transformed because of GenAI? In today's episode, we will focus on one of technology industry's fastest growing segments, the software testing market, or what we popularly call it as a software quality assurance segment. Automation is nothing new as far as the segment is concerned. But how is GenAI going to revolutionize the segment? Is GenAI going to be the tipping point? With the levels of automation that GenAI promises, what is the role of human intelligence or human intuition in this segment? And therefore, how are jobs and skill requirements going to change? These are some of the hard-hitting questions that we will try and address through this panel discussion. We have a fantastic panel of experts who will share their insights and learning with us. But before we begin, a few housekeeping rules. All of you will be on mute for the duration of the webinar. We will have a 10 to 15 minute Q&A after the panel discussion is done. Request you to post your questions in the Q&A window only. You can post them anytime during the webinar. And please don't use the chat window to post your questions. If you want to direct the question to any of the panelists, please mention their names as well. A recording of this webinar will be uploaded on the NASCOM YouTube channel, and I'll share the link with you soon. To introduce the panelists and to take this discussion ahead, I'm very happy to invite my colleague Ankit Bose, who heads NASCOM AI. Here is a quick introduction to Ankit. Ankit is an experienced professional with over 20 years of expertise in thought leadership, innovation, team development, and a strong drive to explore and develop new business units, technology, and service businesses. He currently spearheads the AI vertical of NASCOM and is dedicated to empowering India by encouraging industries to embrace AI and adopt digital technologies. He takes the lead in promoting ethical and responsible tech practices and advocating for self-governance. Ankit has a postgraduate degree in AI/ML from the University of Texas, Austin. Ankit, welcome and over to you.
Hey, thank you, Diksha. I think it is my real pleasure to be here and discussing this amazing topic. So, GenAI is a very rapid evolving field, and it has a major impact on many industries, including software development. So, GenAI tools, as we are seeing, are automating a lot of tasks, including QA, manual testing, code review, bug detection, a lot of them, right? So it is my pleasure to have such a great industry panel here and discuss this topic, right? And I think probably I will start the discussion, and I will start with the industry panelists with two things. One is their brief introduction, and would request one sort of question to be answered, right? So probably for the first question I would want to ask everyone is, what are the major trends and shifts they are seeing in software quality assurance in last couple of years, and how they see it from their perspective, the tech perspective, at the same time from customer perspective. Let me invite Alpa. Alpa, can we have your views to start with?
Sure. Thanks, Ankit. Hello, everyone. I'm Alpa Dhankar, and I manage the application development, maintenance, and testing in WNS out here. In terms of the trends that we see, the software industry, software quality assurance has actually evolved, right from the manual to the automation, and now we are going into the smart automation way, right? There have been so many changes that have happened. Our adoption to the Gen AI, DevOps, Agile has surely transformed the way we used to work earlier, in a manual way of working. So I surely see that this is a very interesting time that we are going through, where Gen AI is going to revolutionize the way everyone is going to test the outcomes out here. And I think one thing that I surely feel that our adoption of Gen AI is going to actually help us test smarter rather than harder way. So that's precisely my view on this. And I'm sure all customers with the newness that they have with the GenAI introduction are all pretty excited to see what GenAI can bring to the table and how it can actually enhance the way they get their outcomes.
Thank you, Alpa. Let me invite Manish. Manish, your views and your introduction, please.
Thanks, Ankit. Good morning, everybody. Lovely being here. I'm Manish Sharma. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Lambda Test. I know the whole session is going to be about GenAI and impact on QA, so I won't talk about AI, but I think the most significant impact on the software engineering industry, which impacts quality as well, has been the whole concept of agile and DevOps. Right? So suddenly what we're seeing is all of these teams coming together to collaboratively develop software and ship it faster. So this is starting to put a lot of strain on, how do you make things tighter from a process perspective? How do you ship software faster? So how do you get more automation in place? I think this is what is driving a lot of change. And more than the DevOps product piece, I think one element which I'm also seeing in customers is the change in the testing COE concepts. So earlier, I'm sure all of us have seen testing COEs in enterprises being centralized. But because of Agile and DevOps, what we're seeing is since every team across the organization is building software, we're seeing a federated structure of quality teams as well. So while there might be a centralized COE, testing teams are also sitting inside these agile teams in helping ship quality software. So that's what we are seeing. Back to you, Ankit.
Great. Thank you, Manish. Let me invite Naresh. Naresh, your intro and brief views.
Thank you, and very glad to be amongst all of these esteemed panelists, and glad to be talking to all of you today morning. My name is Naresh. I head Engineering Excellence Enterprise Productivity Reuse Tools for Infosys. I'm based out of Bangalore, and this is a topic which is very close to my heart, so I was very glad to sort of jump on to this panel. From a trend perspective, Ankit, I'm seeing it in three distinct ways. One, purely from a tech perspective, obviously automation will see a great deal of acceleration with the AI and Gen AI coming in. So I would think that, what we used to always think of autonomous testing, right, or AI-led autonomous, I think that's going to become a reality very, very quickly. And that will have a major impact in how we sort of see things going in the QA space. From a people perspective, I think this will lead to a lot more people with scripting know-how, STEDs, right? The dev type of skill sets making a big impact into the QA arena. Purely from a process and a customer perspective, what I'm seeing is, and this is already happening, right? It will further accelerate, which is the shortening development cycles and the expectation of sort of making them even more shorter, faster feedback loops. These are the three major areas I see getting impacted very swiftly.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Naresh. Let me move to Sairam. Sairam, your views, please.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks, everyone. I think it's an elite panel. Could not have asked for a better speakership than all the leaders that we have here. So there are few aspects that I just wanted to sort of highlight. Say, by the way, I'm the Global Chief Marketing Officer and I lead our M&A Corp development efforts at Signity Technologies. Well, this topic is just not close to my heart, but it is close to every of the 4,500 Signitians because we work on the frontiers of anything to do with quality engineering, digital assurance, and software testing, and world leaders in a pure play dimension to that. We are seeing three dimensions here. See, the significant shift, where enterprises are today leveraging AI-driven software testing, and that is actually enterprise ready. What I call a similar corollary to the ADAS, we are probably at level 4 and level 5 in terms of the level of autonomy. Humans would actually, in the first three levels, humans were taking actions and then we're making decisions in testing. While now computers perform actions and make our lives a little more easier to make decisions at higher efficiencies. So in that sense, AI augmented automation tools would mainly support users at a much deeper, integrations. And that actually creates a newer dimension where AI-driven software testing is genuinely enterprise ready, and we would see a lot of analytics capabilities connecting real-time testing insights to make actions in real time, which goes back to what Manish and others said, fasten the whole cycle in terms of getting software faster and better, which essentially acts as a deterministic lever for global enterprises to become winners in the digital landscape where everything is happening at a breathtaking speed. So that's what we are seeing both as service providers as well as from our customers.
Thank you, Sai. May I move to Prerit? Prerit, your intro and brief.
Sure, Ankit. Thank you. A very good morning to all of you. My name is Prerit, partner with KPMG. I lead the digital quality assurance and software testing service line. So, talking about the trends, I think, Ankit, all the panelists have spoken about Gen AI, automation moving to hyper automation. I think one thing that I would like to bring to the forum from a customer's point of view is, the industry is moving pretty fast, and probably there is a big skill gap that we are not able to match to. There is a demand and supply gap that a lot of clients are seeing and probably addressing that, the Gen AI is still seen as a whole, the whole life cycle work and not specific to testing. Whereas whenever we need it in testing, I see that gap there, that the workforce still wants to be a data scientist or a Gen AI, but not a ML or AI in testing. That kind of a thought is what needs to get into more into the testing specific industry is what I would say.
Thank you, Prerit. Let me move to Rohit. Rohit.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. First of all, thanks for this exciting opportunity to be, discussing this very critical topic, very important topic that is kind of reshaping the entire quality engineering practice. So just a brief introduction. I've been in the IT industry since, over 2 decades now, mostly into telecom and into financial services as well. Currently, I'm heading the India and Cyprus side for MDocs Quality Engineering, which is a team of 3,500 plus quality engineers, primarily working on, as you would have guessed, telecom and financial services. So in terms of the trends, I think you all have covered very, very valid points, and I'm the last one, so I have very few points left. But I do see two very trends. Two very important trends that are kind of reshaping our industry. One is, the complexity of the software in general has increased multiple times in the last few years. I started my days as a developer and I worked on mainframes and everything. We used to have those, monolithic programs and software. From now, you talk about it, you're talking about multiple, failure points, hundreds of microservices before, one particular business journey or a customer journey is kind of delivered. So that complexity overall has increased a lot. And, and case in point, we used to be known as testing services a few years ago at MDocs. And just to, recognize that fact, we changed our name from testing services to quality engineering. Because our testers these days are no longer just testers. It's no longer about taking the specification, writing test cases, and executing them manually and so on. The tester today, and again, we don't call them testers, we call them quality engineers, need to be much, much more technology savvy. They need to know the practices of agile, of DevOps, of microservices, of cloud, of on-prem, of hybrid. It's limitless. And every day, new things are coming. So that is one definite trend, which, the industry and our, people have to prepare. Second is the onslaught of data. Digital transformation, we are living in that world. Newer and newer industries are coming and getting opened up because of the digitization. And AI is more built in than we ever realize. There is so much of AI in our phone, which we carry every day. And because of that, the demand on data and gathering insights out of it, and for us quality professionals, testing the outputs of what that AI is telling you. Is it right? Is it wrong? Is it meeting the customer expectation? Is it trained enough? All those kind of things are just making our job more and more complex. Okay.
It's something, a prophetic futuristic thing that I just wanted to share. The digital twin model actually in testing is significantly taking off. You would now have co-assistants, testing assistants with you, just like you have coding assistants and programmatic assistants. So it's becoming a completely engineering affair, as Rohit said.
Absolutely. And just to add on to what Rohit you said, I think that there's also, changing trend in the focus, towards the security, both, industry as well as customers are now very much focused on to the security aspects, they're now looking at the performance testing a way earlier ahead the curve than, rather than getting it at the end and trying to find out how the performance looks like. So there's a complete shift, it's no more a horizontal, it's more verticalized, where it is actually working in tandem with the development teams and all, in order to make sure how it can be done quicker, faster, and better.
Absolutely.
I think in the ways of the output also that we measure, earlier it was exactly the input or, the expected is equal to actual, versus now we are talking about ranges,
Absolutely.
percentage of accuracy. So that is a shift, or that is a trend that has to come into our work output as well.
So Ankit, if I may add with your permission, I think two more
Please,
things
please.
that I have been noticing, right, which I think we did not cover sufficiently. One, very clearly with respect to visibility, transparency.
Mhm.
I think there is an inherent expectation with all this engineering, automation, etc. coming in, that the levels of visibility and transparency will grow to a much greater extent than we have seen in recent times. And there are solutions, etc., that are sort of coming in to do that, right? Second, purely from a customer standpoint, right, it is a lot more about customizing experiences, personalizing things, and that in a way makes the job of QA, QB, whatever name you want to call it, right, much tougher than how it was back in the day. So these are 2 points I wanted to call.
So, amazing points, I think. I must thank all of you for a brief introduction and very great starting, right? So let me progress to next question, right? And let me start with Rohit, you. We know GenAI definitely is adding a lot of value, but let's go specific, right? In the whole QA life cycle, from test case generation till data generation, defect analysis, all of this, right? So where exactly you see the role of GenAI, and what are the more mature use cases or implementation of GenAI you're seeing in your current work?
Yeah. See, I'll break down the question into maybe 2 parts. And also it depends on how you're using GenAI. So let's start with how you're using GenAI. Are you using a public model, or are you lucky enough to have an enterprise grade version of GenAI trained on your data? Okay. So I know it's a new technology. Obviously, it has taken up very fast. But most of the organizations today do have access to this public data, this public model, and that enterprise model. I think everybody's in a various stages of their journey. So let's talk about the public model for a minute. First of all, this public model, I think we have to understand, it has been trained on publicly open data like Wikipedia and social media, and, GitHub, right? So the low-lying fruit right now is we have to make sure that our people are trained on how to use tools like ChatGPT, how to use prompt engineering effectively, and immediately they can get benefit of generating test cases. Maybe test data might be slightly difficult, but at least the test scenarios they can immediately generate by giving some of the requirements. Again, we have to be careful. We are not exposing our IP because it's in the public model, right? And second, very important use case I see is when we talk about testing life cycle. Typical cycle is test planning, test data generation, automation in place, and reporting, and so on. In each of these life cycle stages of QA, I think we can definitely use something like a pilot kind of thing, where I am working on, say, test planning. Here's a ChatGPT available, where I'm asking the AI to process part of my, or outsource part of my job, and then build up on that. So I think those are immediately available use cases which everybody can start using now. But I would like to caution here with we have to be very, very careful about exposing our customer data, our IP, because the moment we put it on the ChatGPT window, it becomes part of that reinforced learning. It may come out in different ways, which nobody has control over. So as long as, we are trying to do some generic things, which is not exposing any of the client data, I think we can immediately start using that. But the second use case, which is very much exciting and a bit out there in future, and most of the companies, like I said, have started their journey. Like MDocs, we have a special partnership with Microsoft, which gives us access to, the latest versions of OpenAI and so on. That is where the real excitement lies. With your own enterprise version of LLM, you should be able to basically train the LLM on your data. And again, MDocs being a product-led company, we have a lot of complexities around products and the services we offer to telecom. But this is where the benefits that the QA engineer can get would be much far better and of high degree of usefulness. So if I have to say, okay, I am doing a transformation from, say, the old billing product to the latest billing product, right, which will support 5G kind of scenarios. Now, once the AI is trained on my data, it will be very easy, for a tester or a quality engineer to generate very relevant use cases to understand how do I make sure that that migration of data happens. How do I make sure what used to happen in pre-transformation and post-transformation works. So all those kind of very specific benefits can be generated out of it.
Good view, I think. So you brought in a very good point, closed versus open, right? So as I understand, I think it's an individual or a company's choice, right? How they are going. So let me move this question to Prerit. Prerit, in your experience and your visibility, what are you seeing trends currently on the same question? Yeah.
Sure. Thanks. And thanks, Rohit, for your input. So, Ankit, I think I would like to see it over a timeline kind of a thing. When we moved from manual to automation, there were specialized courses or specialized skill set needed.
Prerit, we lost your voice. We lost your voice.
Yeah, we're not able to hear Prerit.
Prerit, we lost your voice.
How about now?
Yeah. We can.
So we moved first from manual to automation, where we needed.
No, Prerit.
I'm not sure what is triggering the loss of voice. So what I was saying is, then we moved to a low code, no code kind of automation, where the BA.
No.
All right. So something is not working well with my laptop, it seems.
Do you want to rejoin again? I think meanwhile.
Yeah, I'll just drop and rejoin. Yeah.
Sure.
Please move.
So let me move to Manish. Manish, what are you seeing, right? What are the uses of GenAI in life cycle, and what are the mature use cases you are seeing, Manish?
I think, the topic of the session is the future of work, right? I think we should call it present continuous, because this is not the future anymore. I think we should also go with the assumption that the industry will solve for the open versus closed use cases, because every enterprise is anyway asking for their own data model, their own LLM, which is their own private instances. So let's assume that is going to get solved, because that's an industry ask. I think, in my view, having been a developer, having been a tester myself, I see some very simple use cases that can really benefit the whole software engineering and testing discipline. The first is, it might seem very, very simple, but it is very impactful, which is documentation of code. See, when you think about QA, they always do go back and look at what is the code that has been written, what's the logic. And many of times, every developer, they're either lazy or they don't want to do it. They don't document code. And the testing team is left looking at the code and trying to understand, okay, what is the purpose of this algorithm? What is going on? So I think that use case I find very, very beneficial from an AI perspective, auto documentation of code, which will just help the whole team. And the second thing, again, targeting the developer is the auto generation of unit test cases. We're talking about auto generation of test cases as whole, but fundamentally in the software engineering lifecycle, unit testing is sometimes skipped. We straight away jump into integration testing or API testing or security testing. I think since we're talking about shipping code faster, these Gen AI models, if they're able to generate unit test cases a lot faster, so that the basic module of testing is done at code at that first level, a lot of these bugs could be caught. I think that's the second use case, which I feel is very mature. And the third one to help the testing team is from a data perspective. Once you have to test the whole system, you need data as well. And in the past, over the last many decades, we've always taken live data, we've obfuscated data so that we can use it, which is a very cumbersome exercise. And it's also a security risk. Can something leak from live data because you have to test real case scenarios? I think this whole synthetically generating data when you're testing application is also a very, very valid use case that I see being adopted from an AI perspective. There are many more, but these three I feel are very straightforward.
Yeah, great point. I think documentation has been a big challenge, right? And it's very monotonous. At the same
We've
time,
all been culprit. I've also been a culprit. We don't like to document code. We just want to get it done.
Yes. And bigger issue, as you highlighted, was someone else's code, right? So probably old code protection. That's also a very big use case, right? So something developed 10 years back, a decade back, everyone is gone now. What do you do? So great points, Manish. Let me again move to Prerit. Prerit, you would want to, hear.
I hope technology stays on my side this time. So what I was mentioning is, if we look at it as a timeline from manual to automation, from automation to low code, no code, and now to Gen AI. Gen AI is suddenly available for everyone's consumption. This ChatGPT kind of tool has brought it in mainstream, and everybody can use it, right from probably either the simplest use is to composing a mail or improving your sentence formation to writing a complex piece of code, right? So, and hence I feel that it is not very pertinent to ask which phase of testing, but it will definitely impact right from when the automation tools came into picture. I think the test case development was left somewhere. It was all focused on execution, faster execution, scripting. We used to create batch jobs which used to execute, but the test case development part or cycle was ignored. I think Gen AI would cover that entire phase. That is one thing. In terms of use cases, I think we've also been working on it, and it has come to a fairly, I would not say far matured state, but yeah, fairly matured state, where we are looking at product-based organizations. Very easy to find the bug duplicacy. Has this bug, if I have a 10,000 bug repository for my long outstanding or long working product, if I prompt it with a test summary, can it give me the Jira ID of the previous bug which is related? And hence obviously my RCA becomes very easy. My the fixing of the code itself becomes easy. So that is one case which we are working on, and I think it's quite helpful for everyone.
Yeah, with your permission, just to add to what Prerit said. See, in QE, we have been using AI to a certain extent. The traditional machine learning cases, triaging, for instance, or regression prediction or regression test spec optimization, that we have already been doing. And we've had, fair degree of success in that. But now I think it can just, scale to just completely another level, simply because, like what Prerit said, we are sitting on huge amount of data coming from, the customer servers. For example, every customer journey which is failing, there's a log file being generated. And I know that there are application profiling tools like Dyna, Trace, and so on, which are doing some of that AI. But now imagine, all this data coming from production, all this, bug reports from Jira and from, various APM tools coming into, your domain, and your LLM getting trained on it. Secondly, think about, testing, like I said earlier, has become very complicated. You have to do a billing run. It takes, huge amount of knowledge on how to actually configure it, how to create the test data, how to generate those usages for telecom use case, right? Or for fraud detection, for that matter, for finance. And with all this coming together, a QE engineer, can simply ask, okay, tell me how to generate bill for this client, or how to set up data for this client. And, because of this collective intelligence, it should be able to give you very, precise steps, which you can, replicate. So this is another, very good use case which can make our job easier and reduce the reliance on, some specific people who happen to know everything, and the person leaves and we have a big problem.
Yeah, we all have faced that problem, right?
Yeah.
Great point.
Goes back, probably ties back to Manish's point on lack of documentation.
Yes.
So let me just go ahead, Ankit.
No, yes, add your point.
Yeah, sure. So I think we pretty much a lot of the stuff has got covered. So instead of repeating, right, so we'll just simplify this. Essentially, there are 5 buckets, right? So the whole, because you spoke about cycle, test planning, test prioritization, creation, maintenance, test data generation, test defect analysis, and visual testing. All these areas have significant amount of impact and leverage to take away from LLMs and impact of not just GenAI, but I would like to still take a step backwards and say that the entire AI, right? So GenAI is one flavor that we are talking. So one thing I would like to highlight is visual testing actually has a significant use case in terms of using AI, because it evaluates the entire visible output of an application and would compare the output against the results that we generally expect by design. So what I mean by that is, with visual testing, there are no specific assertions that you got to write, because that's where you would be able to mimic typically what a human tester would see when things don't look right. In my opinion, that is where the assistiveness and augmentation truly comes in. And then there are areas where very specific scenario driven API testing, extreme sets of test optimization, I think the fellow speakers have covered. The other thing that we could see with AI and GenAI itself is this whole self-healing tests, which is fundamentally redefining the way a low-code approach to testing can actually happen. And most importantly, again, I would like to draw a parallel to what the data generation, right? The software engineering teams, not just testing teams, actually can apply heavy amount of AI, assistiveness of AI using GenAI. Of course, we spoke about open and closed, enterprise specific LLMs and non-enterprise to generate specific synthetic data. While synthetic data, as we all know, is a class of data that is traditionally artificially generated, and it is never obtained from direct observations of the real world. So that in a way sort of completely redefines. And lastly, as I think Rohit was telling, a whole bunch of predictive analytics for defect detection. I think that's the biggest asset now we have, because there are tons of data that actually. So what I would like to call is something called an evolution of a test data lake. So we always associate data lake with customer data, but there's a test data lake inside your repositories that are actually getting evolved with streams of data coming from structured, unstructured, varied sources of data. So that, if you programmatically mine that, and I think you have a great way of predicting the onslaught of defects, which is fundamentally that's the role of the QE or an assurance, no matter what sort of an application we are looking at. So I think that's the age that we are. And then in use case at our organization, some of the platform components we have this predictive dashboard where we are able to sort of predict the state of quality, and we sort of propagate an approach called proactive QE, shifting the whole thought process to extreme left through intelligence, and say that really be proactive because data is there to help you make a decision smarter. So that's our take on it.
Thank you, Sai. I think good points. So let me again ask you next question, right? So
can I just add for the benefit of audience? This is
yes,
AI-powered test environment management, right? I think that's always been the tyranny. Going back to what Rohit said, the heterogeneity and the complexity of the software calls for optimized test environments. I'm sure Manish would also agree, because the spanning of provisioning and deprovisioning resources, reducing the infrastructure costs, and multiplying it by a scale of unbelievable magnitude is a problem that today every tester or every engineer actually faces. So that's where I think we see a lot of AIification, if I had to just use it as an adverb.
Thank you, Sai, for writing that. So, Sai, I think let me ask you the next thought of question which comes to me is, we all spoke about briefly low code, no code platform, right? So, the impact, are they measurable in a QA life or QA, engineer's life with low code, no code? Are they bringing efficiency along with GenAI? And is cloud computing specifically contributing anything to that, right? Is it optimizing? Is it enhancing? What are your thoughts, Sai?
Yeah, I think three simple answers. First, let me take the cloud, right? Cloud is today by default, it's an infrastructure layer, it's a given. So is it a productivity enhancer? Yes. As I was just telling, right? Anything that you want to do at a 10x, 100x scale in terms of your infrastructure components is just possible only because of the power that cloud brings in. And it's also about cloud enabled development. The life cycle itself is cloud enabled, where you pull the code. Gone are the days where I remember the first life of mine, SVN internal facing code repositories in huge HP UX servers. These are not the days, right? So I'm sure Manish from Lambda Test, that's where they're actually revolutionizing. We are partners with them. So I think that's the whole thing. So cloud, there is no question about it. And cloud is substantially mainstream than even what it is 2, 3, 4 years ago. The second part I would like to also sort of draw parallel is low code. The two buckets. See, using low code to develop applications is one affair, but there is a low code approach to testing. So that's where I was telling. For example, we have a component called Insta. Again, this is not about that solution. The approach is about how do you bring in self-healing, how do you actually democratize test case, test authoring development, so that you can actually bring in functional dev testers as well as business analysts into the fore, where in a natural language construct, you can actually code in a test case, which typically gets demystified, and the test case is authored. That is true power of low code. And that is, imagine if that is vendor agnostic. So imagine that it works across a multitude of test tools. You're actually democratizing the whole. So that is where the low code is significantly demonstrating very measurable productivity. And then it actually shifts to the upper layer where the app development itself is getting low codified. So in a way, it is there to stay. And every facet of software dev cycle now, not just the testing life cycle, in a great fashion, it's no code, low codified. I would not say no code, but it's low codified. For sure, it is measurable, substantially measurable.
Great. Thank you, Sai. So let me move to Manish. Manish, what are your views on the same question? Manish, you're on mute.
Thanks. I think we've learned that on Zoom, always on mute. I always like to simplify things, Ankit. So, going back again many decades, we used to code in VI, right? Then productivity became important and IDEs came in. I still remember when I first saw the WYSIWYG kind of model where you can drag and drop buttons and the applet, the code is getting generated. We thought, oh, this is going to revolutionize things, development will simplify. It just gets more and more complicated. So if you think about even UX layout, there are so many templates and models available that people can use, but still they go and customize it. So while low code, no code will be there, it will accelerate software development, but it will actually create a lot more complications. So is it here to stay? It is, right? But how can we use it to accelerate software development? It goes back to that same point which I made early on, that the pace of software development has accelerated. Right? You suddenly need a mobile app for a supplier connect. Right? So you're not going to spend 2 months in developing it. You will just take a low code, no code environment, just piece things together, use APIs and get the code out. Testing also needs to do the same things, right? So I think the role of AI and low code from a test is just bringing all of these things together. I'll just add a few more use cases to your earlier question, which is, if a piece of code has changed, what is the impact on testing? So if you look at a typical enterprise or you look at a typical product that all of us are working on, there'll be thousands and thousands of test cases. So having AI identify, okay, this piece of code has changed. So rather than running a 4-hour regression run, let me just quickly prioritize and run this piece of test case because that's the only one that is impacted. these are the things that AI can actually accelerate. So coming back to your question, low code, no code will be there, but in the end, it will spit out code, which again needs to be tested. Right? So in the end, it'll always be bits and bytes of code that needs to be tested.
Great. Thank you. Great insights, Manish. So let me move to Naresh. Naresh, what is that you think?
Yeah, so I think there are a couple of parts to this question, right, Ankit? So one is the low code, no code part. And low code, no code, I have over the years believed that it is more of low code than so much of no code, right? Because no code, I think we are still some way away. Hopefully we'll get there someday, but we are still in a low code phenomenon, right? The no code thing is sort of going to catch up in a way. But purely from a QA perspective, I think, there is a great number of potential benefits, right? So whether it is reducing the time, cost of testing, right? And these low code apps perhaps are a little bit easier to test in my view, right? From just the narrow view of just looking at how do you test them, right? So from perspective of time and cost, right? You could actually see significant reduction, driving better efficiencies of testing, right? Which can free up time, correct? So given that a lot of it is structured, you have the ability to do a lot more proactive test case generation, execution can be planned a lot better, etc. And then again, it sort of also makes things a lot more accessible. But having said that, there are also challenges, right? Some of it can be complexity because these are not always easy to learn, right? The likes of Mendix and OutSystems and things like that. The lack of code can also make it difficult because you don't know what's happening. It's a black box, right? You don't have access to the code in the back, etc. So those could be the other challenges that you see. Purely from the cloud perspective, I think, which was the second part of your question, I think cloud has tremendous benefits, right? And sort of just looking at the ability to bring in scalable test environments. It could be driving better elasticity, running tests in parallel, right? Just the cost effectiveness of it, and cost effectiveness is with a bit of an exclamation from my perspective, because it depends on your contracts and how you're sort of working with the hyperscalers, etc. And how you're driving the whole hybrid nature of the cloud. It can actually eventually turn out to be cost effective, but if you're not careful, it can give a much bigger bill as well, right? So the aspect of driving automated pipelines for your continuous integration, continuous deployment, processes, right? And thereby bringing in instant feedback. I think those are things which become so much more easier with the cloud than otherwise. And then working with a diverse set of environments, right? So today, when you think of testing an app, it is a combination of form factors, distribution across geographies, right? Devices, operating systems, and whatnot. I think all of that becomes a lot more easier, manageable with the cloud versus, trying to do it on-prem in the traditional way. So these are all the benefits, in my view, with sort of, working with the cloud or with low-code platforms. And this is continuing to transform, right? This we haven't seen yet the end of this, right? So this will continue to impact even in a much, much more bigger way, offering more scalability, better cost effectiveness, versatility in how we operate and run all these tests. And I want to touch upon the aspect of data, what within Infosys we call as live engineering. So the idea of using all this data to then drive persona-based use cases where you are able to predict, proactively determine, right, do risk-based testing, identify which test should I run for a set of features that have got developed, etc. A lot of that, I think, the decision making is shifting from the user to the machine, and in that sense, right, it is sort of the combination of the human and the machine doing it in the perhaps the most effective manner is what we are sort of starting to see a lot more.
Great additions, Naresh. I think let me move to Rohit. Rohit, what's your take on this?
See, I mean, I feel that the low code, no code problem, QA industry has already cracked, in my view, very successfully. And case in point, we have a tool called Ginger, which is Amdocs IP, but we open sourced it, a long time ago. And we have been, building use cases like, visual testing that, Sai, I think you talked about already. And I think that problem we have cracked as an industry. There are many tools out in the market, tools like Tosca, a lot of homegrown tools every organization has, which have solved this problem. I don't think testers today to automate need to actually write those scripts themselves, right? In fact, in Ginger, we have even got to the point where, so typically the problem that, Manish was talking about with the low code, no code is you generate the code, and then suppose your UI changes, those object references, get changed, and then your code stops working. So in Ginger, we even created a feature where there's an auto discovery of those change objects and connecting it back to the code which is already there. So I think as an industry, we have done quite a lot of work on that part. The advent of generative AI and how that can transform. So I maybe I want to build upon what Manish said. With generative AI coming in, I think it can work as an orchestrator of all the capabilities. So, for example, you have a low-code, no-code platform, which is creating that code, right? Now you have these APIs. Now you have these microservices. And still today what happens is you generate the code, somebody has to actually execute it. Somebody actually has to connect it to Jenkins, right? For a complete autonomous execution and all. I think that orchestration part is where, we can really try to benefit by bringing together all the capabilities that your systems expose and having that, that seamless kind of operation. And again, just to add, cloud will make it all easy because, I remember those days where the testers used to test on the mobile devices, those Samsungs and Apples. And now we have moved to simulators and we have moved to device farms where, all these devices are actually hooked up. And that makes all that integration even more seamless.
I agree with Rohit and Naresh on this, that cloud surely has transformed the way you actually test today, right? So earlier the procurement and all those physical servers and all used to take hell lot of time. And now it's so easy to scale up and scale down as we, need the specific environment to be there. And for sure, even it has helped in the performance and the load test as well. The amount of huge data sets that we have access to today has really, really transformed the way the performance and the load test are conducted. And we have been able to do that in parallel to the regular regressions and all that we conduct, right? So that also has helped reduce the timelines and time to market.
If I can just add, Ankit, it's a little ironical. The cloud has been around for such a long time. All of us in the tech industry, we're all in the tech industry, right? We've helped our customers move their, ERP applications to the cloud, CRM applications to the cloud, HR applications to the cloud. All functional applications have moved. But software engineering is only now starting to move to the cloud. So if you go and talk to enterprises, they don't have their software development on the cloud. They might be using servers. But over the last 4 or 5 years, and this has really been accelerated after COVID because of distributed teams, that software engineering is now moving to the cloud. I think that is a big shift that we're seeing in the industry.
Right.
I think one point that I wanted, while all the panelists, are making pertinent points and I don't want to be the party pooper, but I think it's an important point for us to first realize whether this would need AI or not. A lot of clients I see just jump on to Agile for now, even if your requirements are fixed, but because we have to catch up with the industry, because we have to be in, I'm doing Agile projects, we don't analyze it well, whether waterfall or iterate.
We lost you, Prerit.
We lost Prerit again.
So the way we have done it for Agile, it should not be here. Please evaluate it cautiously whether GenAI would actually help in this use case and then go for it.
I completely agree with you.
Totally agree.
No, I think all of us would agree to what Prerit just said. Yeah. We as advocates of technology should never insist upon just because it is path breaking. It should always be a problem solver at the first than a problem creator.
True. Precisely a call between, how much we need it versus how much we leverage it, So I think that it's very important for us to evaluate each and every scenario and the ask in order to take a call what and how much of it is expected and required.
Absolutely. AI, GenAI, cloud computing, the right fit is important. If it is not fitting, no way of
Absolutely.
force fitting it, right? So
Yeah. One
great.
size will not fit all.
Yes, yes, yes. Great point. I think let me move the question on the talent piece, right? Rohit, let me start with you. So how are you seeing the QA talent ecosystem or probably the landscape evolve, right? What are the shifts you are anticipating, right? Are you seeing any roles getting sunset and any new roles getting added? And what is important training and then reskilling employees on that? So your views, sorry.
So let me start with slightly dramatic statement. Okay. So, and this is, just a conversation with one of my colleagues. So they were talking about, there is so much fear in the market that AI will take our jobs.
Hmm.
And what we ended up concluding in that 2-minute conversation is AI will not take away your job. Your job will be taken away by your colleague who has embraced AI. That's the reality of it. See,
Absolutely.
all the tools have been coming, whether, when computers came, we all thought, people will lose jobs. Now, autonomous cars are coming, people are thinking, drivers will lose their job. See, some bit of reshuffling happens. It does happen as, technology advances. But the important thing is that there's a clear difference between those who have adopted the technology, embraced the technology, have learned to leverage it, versus those who are still, living in that good old days. Oh, in my times, it used to work like this. So I think, whichever way you put this question, one thing is very clear. Whether it's just not QE, it applies to everyone, because even developers, maybe AI can replace developers as well, because ChatGPT can generate your code also. So it kind of applies to this technology industry, very relevant to that. That if you are not able to upskill yourself, if you are not able to leverage the tools which are available in the market, and I'm really happy at the way the organizations are putting so much importance, so much thrust, and so much of investment in bringing these technologies to the people, to our workforce. Now it is important that the workforce embraces it and learns to leverage it. Again, it's not going to be an easy transition. It never is. When you are trying to change your old ways and moving into the new ones. But I think it's a question of mindset. And once we have achieved that mindset, we are ready to learn. Because see, if you look at the rate of technology, Twitter, for instance, reaching that 1 billion took X amount of time. How much time did ChatGPT take? So there is a huge acceleration in the rate of change of adoption of technology. There's a huge acceleration. So it is going to be more and more onslaught of newer technologies which are being thrown at you. And as professionals, we have to become more adept at adapting to those. Thankfully, with the advent of Gen AI and all, that adoption has become easier. With the democratization of trainings like Udemy and Coursera, learning those has also become easier. You no longer have to I started my day when I used to code Java on Notepad. Today nobody even knows that, and probably they don't need to. You just need to have that right mindset that if it doesn't work, I should be able to get my hands dirty and go there.
Thank you, Rohit. Let me move to Alpa. Alpa, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think I'll echo Rohit's thought out here. So it's precisely the adoption, and I'll just take one example. How many of us really knew that, playing video games can be a job? It is today, right? The industry evolved with the changing, trends that came up. And that's what the change is. We are in a time at this stage where things are changing at this moment. And I agree with Rohit on that it's not going to take away the jobs. It's precisely the person who is adaptive to adapt to the newer ways of working with Gen AI introduction, all those fundamentals, they will actually scale up, right? Today, if you really look at it, airline industry work on automation, right? It's autopilot. But does that mean that there is no need for pilots to be in the airplane? No, it requires a pilot to be there to handle those scenarios which are really exceptional, which the automation of the AIs can't handle it, right? And that's where pilots need to upskill themselves up rather than just, knowing how to manually drive the plane. And then that's the kind of a shift that we would need to have. And not just in our software quality assurance industry, it's precisely is applicable everywhere. People need to adapt, they need to upskill and see how they can actually utilize the power of the tools that we have now in our hand. It's a very powerful tool that we have, out here. And we need to also learn how we can actually use it well, and that's where I think I want to touch upon a point on the ethics piece. It's very, very important that people who upskill themselves also understand the importance of the power that we have in our hands out there and ethically use the AI piece. And that's where I think the training platforms are doing, the organizations are playing a very important role out here in coaching and mentoring each employee and upskilling them onto the useful and important utilization of the power that we have using GenAI. The machine learning fundamentals, our testing teams surely needs to upskill on that. As Manish, you also pointed out, right? They need to know what is coded out there in order to test it, right? So they need to know those fundamentals, the model, how it is developed, so that they are able to actually test it properly and use it ethically for sure. Very important for us.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, Alpa. Let me take Naresh's view. Naresh, what's your view on this? How do you see it?
Yeah, can you hear me, Ankit?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So I, just want to pick out on the point that Alpa was making, right, with respect to the aspect of both soft as well as the hard skills, right? While I think the hard skills are known, right, we know what they are, right? The tech, the domain, etc. I think it's also important to understand that as AI, Gen AI, automation sort of plays a significant role, it is going to alter the value chain very, very differently, which means traditionally what we have seen with respect to where effort goes, right? Certain areas which used to, for example, right, we always used to estimate 30% for this, right, 20% for that. I think a lot of those long held numbers are going to be questioned a lot now, because what was 30% will perhaps become 3%, and what was 3% will perhaps need to become 30%, right? So a lot of the skill sets that are required to then work in that kind of a value chain and be more effective in that value chain are going to be, and that's what things which perhaps were always important but maybe not paid as much attention. Design thinking, right? Your ability to discover newer problems, correct? Your ability to engage with customers and stakeholders with a lot more depth and insight. I think those are the kinds of things which will perhaps take more time. Generating the code, whether it is developer or test scripts, etc., right, is perhaps things that the machines will do, right, once you understand the domain and the logic a lot better. So I think there are those kinds of things which perhaps we are not paying as much attention that needs to be brought to the forefront. So from a skill set perspective, I think the hard skills plus the softer skills, which perhaps were not given as much importance, Ankit, in my view, also become very critical.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good, Sai.
Yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to take one different view to this whole thing, right? I think every point covered is absolutely apt. I would call this whole era itself is changed, right? It's an era of reinvention. So if I were to actually imagine, give an ad to hire a tester, I would not be advertising whether you know Selenium or XYZ tool, right? So let me take a step back. I would probably put 5 words, right? I'd like to have a specialist who understands the labor of love because it's an area of specialization. I would want explorers in my team who have a lot of personal odyssey to explore because it's an absolutely different digital era that the applications are traversing. An utopian who have a sustainable utopia to sort of think beyond and apply all these great tools that we are speaking. So there is a new trait that is evolving psychologically, what I call the intelligent disobedience. So you need to have the persistent ability to question the status quo for being a modern day tester. And then what I call design thinking that Naresh said, right? These are the areas of what I call physical pixels, ability to look at devices, things. So these are stuff that, people will live with. And lastly, you need to have enriched reality to be a perceiver, right? So if you have these attributes, which are very difficult to measure, it's highly important. Now, let me be very specific, right? ML validation, the ability to provide ML model monitoring. These are some of the roles that we are actually seeing. AI testers, right? Again, there is voice AI specialists who can integrate and test applications in an enterprise LLM model with specific language models like a Bloomberg GPT, Health GPT that are coming in. The area of exploratory testing is reborn. If you were to look at sunrise skills again, right? and then people who can actually bypass the hallucinated outputs in an LLM transcript. Lastly, someone spoke at the beginning, I think, about security, right? With the enterprise guardrails that are living in, there is a blur between enterprise and non-enterprise LLM, because customers are, let me tell you, with all respects, they're also scared with the invention of the interjection of these things. So you need to have very specific skills there. So two buckets. One is the attributes that I spoke about, which are psychological. Another is very specific skills, which are the sunrise sectors when we live in this area of emerging digital reinvention that's happening everywhere.
Ankit, I'd like to quickly add and take this thought further from Sairam. I think very, very valid points, because it's not just a technology. It's not just a technology shift. See, if you look at generative AI, low code, no code, all tools, it's just a higher degree of automation, right? And whenever you go to a higher degree of automation, I think what changes is your ability to leverage it in the best possible way, without compromising your objectives, right? So sorry if I'm sounding a bit cryptic, but let me give you one example with AI. We keep saying again this fear: robots will replace humans, or humanoids will replace humans. The idea is you basically delegate your lower level tasks to them, and what becomes more important is the value of human judgment. The judgment AI cannot bring. Chat GPT, if you look at it, at the very core of it, what is it? It is just, taking all this information which is lying there and regurgitating that information back to you. It may or may not be right? It may be hallucinating, like Sairam said. And we had this famous case with, the Google Bard demo. On very first day, in the demo, it hallucinated, right? So I think the value of human judgment is what we have to pay more importance to. And second thing, because this coding, getting to the depths of understanding that syntax and all is probably going to be no longer required, because there are tools to do that. I think besides judgment, your ability to articulate, your ability to communicate, your ability, what is prompt engineering, for example? It's a way to communicate. I think those social skills, those humanities, maybe they will become more important, because you need to, at the end of the day, you have this huge plethora of information. How do you leverage it to the best of your benefits?
Art is going to be a mainstay skill for a tester.
Absolutely.
Cognitive and art skills, not just the science, in terms of a skill set, if you were to hire.
And probably just one message for the entire 200 plus strong testers community listening to us. This discussion is not to scare you. If you are listening to some terms for the first time, or you're not too much into AI, you're not going to lose your job tomorrow. But the message is, act now on it. It is important to gain that skill and embrace the change. Otherwise, in very near future, and we can become obsolete. So embrace the change now is the message that we want to give.
Yeah.
Perfect. I think great message, and I think it was greatly said by Rohit that people who have skills on AI and their current job, they will flourish. They will grow, all of that. Right? So that's very important. So great message, Prerit. So probably I think we have only 30 minutes left and probably 15 minutes for discussion. I would want to develop on one very important thought, right, or a topic. What are the guardrails, right? We all are implementing AI and GenAI in our work, our customers, projects, all of that. What are the guardrails are we, seeing? What are the guardrails are we, probably implementing, right? Let me ask this question to probably Sairam. Sairam,
Yeah,
can we?
sure. I'll just keep it simple. I think, see, it is very similar to how open source evolved in the initial days, right? So there was significant amount of apprehension in terms of what library to use, what library not to use. So there is a strong parallel in terms of what's right now happening, right? And then, as I said, with all respects to customers, they are actually having more apprehension. And I would also like to use the word scare when you're trying to say that I have looked at something like an OpenAI or a chat GPT. These are just two words that we use. There are many, many implementations, as we know. So in terms comes to guardrails, I think there are, certain ethical reasons why customers are obviously very apprehensive, which I think we touched about it. Then there are also legal reasons. That's where, as a service provider, we have to be very careful, because some of the areas that the customers wouldn't see, we have to be cognizant of educating them as much as we could foresee. And at the end of the day, when there is a full-blown enterprise point, I think it's going to still take 2, 3, 4 years, where verticalization and sub-verticalization of LLMs that are going to be prominent, which will make both service providers as well as enterprises completely leverage for production level enterprise Gen AI use cases without having to necessarily worry about what is secure and what is insecure. Lastly, there are certain specific roles that you might have in your teams now as copyright observers that we used to have earlier. I remember back in one of my earlier engineering days, we used to have very specific experts who are authorized to tell and educate what open source libraries to actually use and what not to. We probably need to have a similar observability as a role dimension to ensure that we don't cross what is publicly allowed and what is publicly not. I think that's where increasingly this whole guardrail concept, ethical concept, legal concept, and the implications of AI, that's the broad term that I would use. And by the way, it's a boardroom dialogue. It is a very carefully drawn CXO level initiative. It cannot be left at an engineer's discretion. It cannot be bottoms up. It actually has to be top down. So it also then boils down to the training that you have, the awareness that you get created. So a lot of sensitization. That said, for private automation POC use cases, productivity enhancers, yeah, ChatGPT, OpenAI, that's the way to go. But not at production level without being cognizant of the dangers that you might get into. So it's a very theoretical subject too, but this is my view.
Great. So let me move to Prerit.
Ankit?
Manish, you wanted to go? Please.
Yeah, I was going to jump in. I think if you just use a time machine and go back 15, 16 years and replace Gen AI with cloud, I think we'll be having the same conversation, right? What are the guardrails an enterprise should have to embrace cloud? So, in our industry, things will keep on changing. Right now, we're talking about Gen AI, something else will come in 6, 7 years later. No pun intended, but that whole agile model needs to exist in the tech approach as well. Ship and learn. Every organization out there is experimenting with some form of Gen AI. As they experiment, they will realize what is important, what is not important, what is doable, what is not doable, what is secure, what is not secure. And I think the industry will come together to solve a lot of these things. Now, when you go out and buy even SaaS software, you look at the security models, you look at the architecture model, you look at the data model, because the organizations have become mature in understanding what cloud means. I think same thing with Gen AI. I think over the next 4 or 5 years, things will evolve, but everybody will experiment and have small projects running.
I absolutely agree with what Sai and Manish said, probably. And, is this the last technological advancement that we would see? No. There would be something coming along which probably will give us not days, maybe hours kind of turnaround now for, a faster turnaround. So yes, but I think very similar to what Manish said, everybody wanted to jump onto the cloud. We jumped on. Security remained the primary importance. So data security, one of the most important aspects still for the client. Then, like how we first talked about cloud, then we got into whether it should be private, whether it should be public, or then hybrid. So right now, a more popular model is the widely available ChatGPT, the Gen AI use case. But as it evolves more for the enterprise use, I think there will be bifurcations that will come in. Right now, it's more popular public or personal use, but it will evolve with time for the enterprise usage, and we will definitely have a subversions kind of thing within, the cloud, the Gen AI as well.
So quickly to add, any technology, any tool, whether it's guns, whether it's AI, there's an ethical use, there's a, unethical use. So those guardrails are very important, and Sai explained it very well. But see, the problem with generative AI is you don't realize what you are doing, because what you see is not what you get. A lot of things are happening, behind the scenes, And it's hard for you to say that, is it ethical? Am I exposing my customer data? So to the, viewers here on this webinar, I would say let's be very, very careful of exposing your customers' data, even the code. You might think that, I'll just type this code into the ChatGPT window and ask for ChatGPT to troubleshoot. That code becomes part of the memory of ChatGPT, and you might be liable to, exposing customer data. So let's be very careful the way we use it. And I think the only way it can be, handled is by bringing more awareness to the people. Because again, and the problem is because other technologies, ramped up slightly slowly. The pace was lesser. Now, because of this rapid acceleration, people don't know, what to know, what not to know, what to do, what not to do. So I think as leaders, we have a job here to make sure that people are aware of the implications of what they are doing, and we have to improve that overall general awareness of how to use these tools.
Absolutely, Rohit. To that point, Rohit, some of the clients that I work with, they have actually banned ChatGPT on a corporate use in the application because people were not thinking, they were just copy pasting either email text or a piece of code to ChatGPT to optimize it, but it ultimately became a part of their code. So that is absolutely a brilliant point, Rohit.
Let me ask this again. I think you from Naresh. What do you think?
Yeah.
What is this doing?
Thanks, Ankit. I think we have covered the generic points. I want to perhaps get down to a level deeper. In fact, at Infosys we have taken a two-pronged approach. We are leveraging the enterprise grade capabilities that are coming in from the partners, right? GitHub Copilot and the likes. We are also developing what we call as narrow transformers. These are models that we believe need to solve enterprise level problems versus population scale problems. So, which means I can perhaps do with a 2 billion or a 15 billion or even a few 100 million parameter model to work on a specific piece of code and generate documentation, code completion, etc. for just that narrow set of data set, right? So we have had some success, and in that process, right, I mean, I am trying to put myself, I mean, I'm a buyer in that sense, in the role that I play, and I'm sort of using that experience to then build all these guardrails within the questions that I am asking my partners, right? What would I sort of want to build in as guardrails? So 3-4 important things come to my mind very, very clearly, right? So one, the whole aspect of explainability, so why is something happening and why is it happening in a certain way, right? So the ability to have full traceability, trails, audits, audit logs, etc., right? With respect to the decisions that the AI is making. So we are making sure that, all of this is quote unquote auditable, right? Second is, the models need to be interpretable. I should be able to understand what is happening, right? So that is important. The second aspect I think the panelists touched upon was with respect to bias, right? So see, eventually these are tools, right? So they will go wrong. Like the ChatGPT example that Rohit was mentioning, things will go wrong, right? But how do you make sure that both inward when data is going to the model and when the model is sort of spewing out the output, how do you make sure that there are controls on both ends, right? It could be simple things, right? Sensitive information. Are you submitting something that you are not, so PII, etc., right? Toxic information, racial stuff, and things like that. So those kinds of things. What kind of data are you actually feeding to the model? Is that data inherently biased? And this is a pitfall that you will see more and more with respect to the localized, right, within the enterprise training, etc., that you are doing, because a lot of times you ask these questions of the outside, but when you're doing stuff within, right, these things tend to be ignored, right? There are tools already available to sort of detect, mitigate bias in the models, right? So are you using some of those tools and techniques? And then also having periodic reviews of what kind of decisions, AI decisions, right, to identify any bias, etc., that is happening. Then, having these levels, just the way we have environments, right? You have a dev, test, pre-prod, prod, that type of a thing. as you promote higher in the environments, and this we are doing again using the same principles of DevSecOps, right? How do you promote gating, etc. So that you don't endanger something which is production grade, like Sai and others were saying, right? Then having clear accountability and ownership. The maker checker concept, who is creating the model, who is training it with data, who is giving the data, who is consuming, right? There have to be clear lines of responsibilities so that the actions that every single team or individuals are taking, those teams are sort of held accountable for whatever they're doing. There are aspects of privacy that come into picture, whether it is with respect to anonymizing the data, correct consent, which is a very clear aspect of collecting, using data by informing or asking the permission of the user, right? And then now more and more there is a bill in the parliament, right? EU regulation is coming up, etc. So there is going to be a whole lot of regulations around this, right? So that again means that all of these things need to be accelerated with respect to the ethical guidelines. But net, I think the important thing is to make sure that right now, at least, that there is a human in the ecosystem, in the loop, right? So whether it is healthcare, whether it is anything that you are doing with respect to data, the decisions need to be supervised, reviewed, validated, approved by somebody which is a human in the system, right? Which is sort of taking care of some of these things as well. So those are the points that I wanted to mention.
One sweeping thing, right? So as Indians, because this is more, we are all SI community, service provider community, our ability to respect privacy was never in our DNA for whatever reason. In India, it was not the case. Now with this whole thing, when we are trying to service global clientele, I think it is an utmost case of sensitization. That's what I think Naresh was also telling, to supervise and educate the whole diversified workforce to understand why and what is data privacy from many angle, because it might just spill boil into something unbelievably complex if it's not being attended to. And it will also throw a new opportunity if you are cognizant of this privacy, so that respect for you as a service provider will significantly go up in front of a customer.
Absolutely. I think all points were very, very important. And I think as NASCOM, we truly believe when we build our AI system, when we implement, it should be having a central pillars, responsibility or ethics or trustworthiness, right? And I think NASCOM, we came out with, first of its kind, GenAI, guidance, responsibility guidance on GenAI, which had three purviews. One was researcher, one was, developer, third was the user. And what are the guidelines? All of that we covered that. So I think as a community, tech community, when we embrace these technologies, we should be ethical and we should think of all those points what we will discuss, right? So very important.
I think just one thing I want to add, which we did not cover so far. It also opens up, grounds for misuse. Because see, as leaders at corporate organizations, we can focus on ethics, we can focus on regulations. Hackers have always been there, and they will get here as well. They can, and again, the very premise of any large language model is based on reinforced learning, right? So with the right prompts or the wrong prompts in this case, you can easily poison the data. So I think there has to be, more emphasis on how to test and, catch those kind of activities. And I think that human in the loop and building those guardrails, I think that discussion becomes even more bigger in my view, because, within the bounds of the corporate, we can implement rules and policies, but outside it's very difficult. And it's very difficult to say that, okay, I am a closed system. You cannot afford to be a closed system. So it will open up. We'll have to figure out new ways to deal with it.
Just one very quick point, maybe because of all this, the disadvantage that I see is that original thinking or innovation might go down because somebody might only be using ChatGPT to find out what new should I do, and it will give you only historical data. So that aspect has to be protected. The innovation to get beyond GenAI as well needs to be still there.
Perfect. I think we have had amazing discussion, right? So probably time to end. I would want to continue this further. So probably let me go around the table again, starting with Alpa, right? Alpa, what is the next stage of evolution you see for quality engineers, quality assurance guys with GenAI, right? And what is your one key message to everyone? I think I will request you to limit it to 60 seconds.
Sure.
We
I
might take some
understand the
questions.
time constraint out here, Ankit. So I think we all agree that it's a new era that we are into, right? And our industry is evolving, right? The key message is to adapt to the new change that's coming. And I think one of the very important piece that we should keep in mind at all times is that how ethically we use it. Precisely, I'll go back to my earlier message, how much we need it versus how much we leverage it. It's extremely important for us to keep that in any of our decisions that we make while using any of the tools that are using GenAI today.
Great. Thank you, Alpa. Let me go to Manish.
Thanks for the amazing conversation. I think fundamentals don't change. I think understanding from a testing perspective, what are the fundamentals? What does regression mean? What does load testing, performance testing, agile testing? Understanding those concepts is fundamental for the audience. So make sure we stick to that. And there are so many articles that are coming out on GenAI. Everybody is sharing their opinion. I think we should read everything and absorb all that is coming out, because these things will keep on evolving.
Thank you, Manish. Sai?
Yeah, so I'll break it into two. Like, let's look at the positive side, right? There are new areas of opportunities for us as professionals and businesses. Voice-enabled enterprise LLM integrated conversational AI applications, AI-enabled medtech, a lot of predictive technologies, space tech, not just because we had the biggest of the events that happened, agri-tech and climate tech. These are the areas where generative AI will throw up significantly newer opportunities, including digital twins, for us all as assurance professionals to embark upon. One key message: AI will be ever assistive and it will augment the human intelligence. It would never replace, and human in the loop is here to stay. This is our only tools that can assist us to do better.
Thank you, Sai. Prerit?
I'll keep it simple. If you've still been dismissive about it, please don't. GenAI is here. It is a change. Evaluate it carefully, whether you actually need it for this solution or not. Third, learn it, adapt it as quick as gone. It is not here to take away a job, but it is here to aid to the efficiency that you can create with it. That is what I'll just.
Thank you, Prerit. Naresh?
Yeah, so, a couple of lines, right? One, very clearly, I think we should not forget that the essence of QA in general, right, is about assuring quality. And while the tech and the tools and the processes and all of that will keep changing, I think the essence of QA should not be forgotten, which is to ensure quality, to assure quality, right? That's very, very critical. Second point, look, I think while AI, Gen AI, automation, autonomous, all of this is great, I think eventually it is about enhancing the user experience. So we should not undermine the aspect of or the attention that user experience should get in the midst of all of this. And to all the QA professionals, I would say, folks, stay agile, stay curious, right? And then you will be able to deal with any change that comes your way.
Great. And again, ending with you, Rohit.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I think I'm a technology enthusiast, and I'm very excited at the possibilities that in lying it right in front of us. It's an amazing time to be in this kind of job, and I think especially about the QA or the QE community, I think our level of responsibility has to increase, simply because we are the quality gate, we are the custodian, like Naresh said, of the customer experience, not just the immediate customer, but even the end customer. And we have to make sure that the end customer does get what they're looking for. So the only thing that is the onus kind of lies on us to scale up to that responsibility, because like I said earlier, with all this advancement, more and more engineering jobs are going to be delegated to AIs and machines and so on. Our job would be to make sure that does it meet the requirement, does it meet the end result, does it meet the generate customer satisfaction. So I think it's a very exciting position to be in, and I wish all the best to this community.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Rohit. So I think we can move to the QA section. Diksha, you would want me to ask questions, or do we open it up for others?
No. So I'll read out the questions
Please.
because I've been going through. There are plenty, and I don't think we have the time to go through all of them. But there is time for one or two. There are a couple of questions around costs and investments on GenAI, which I thought were important questions. The first one was around from a small enterprise perspective, right, where costs are a big thing. How can they leverage GenAI given that they're so expensive, plus open source tools are not that many at this stage? That was one question. The second question was related to the internal enterprise, where enterprises show interest in investing in GenAI, but if you go to them specifically from a testing perspective, there is a reluctance. So how do we change that mindset? And this is open, so maybe two of you can
take a very quick dig at it. The first one, cost will always be relative. You have to look at the ROI, whether it be automation days. It will always remain a question whether to go for it or not. It has to be seen in relative terms. You cannot just say that, this.
Does anybody else want
Yeah,
to?
I think I can pick that up
Go ahead.
on the same lines. I think it's all driven by the ROI, a very conscious call of what is the investment being made and what are the returns that we get. So it's going to be driven by that, depending upon the scale as small or large, And on the second one about, how we can actually utilize this, it has to be the core fundamentals which are there, which have been the driving force on us: security, customer requirements, do we really need it? All of that should be kept in place in between as the core in order to take any kind of call on the investments being made for a project or at an enterprise level.
I'll probably give it a shot. So the second one first, right? So I think you should never go with testing only thing. It's a life cycle, the software engineering life cycle. We all spoke today. It's quality engineering and digital assurance. It's just not testing alone, because every facet of the entire dev to QA to prod to post-prod cycle components are getting significantly enhancedly accelerated using GenAI or the impact of AI. So every facet of automation is a productivity enhancer that can be computed and showcased back to the customer, which goes back to the ROI very specifically. The first question, in terms of your deployment costs and infrastructure costs, again, the developer productivity and the tester productivity at every level is a payback for the project to get initiated. So that actually does a buyback if you have to look at infrastructure setup and cost of deploying. And of course, there is certain amount of cloud and infrastructure and tooling cost is involved, but you'll have to look at it like payback versus what you initially deploy. So that's the take on it.
Just a more practical approach, especially because somebody mentioned small enterprise. See,
Right.
the enterprises which are big, they have deep pockets, they have partnerships, and for them it's easier to be a part of the game, even lead the game. But for smaller enterprise, I think the costs are going to be prohibitive in the short term. So my suggestion would be, start with what's available out there. It's a $20 license, right, for OpenAI. Start with what you can. And think about those use cases without compromising. Again, I'm reiterating your data, and see how it works out for you. And very soon you'll have your own guidance system in place to see whether it's going to help you. And once you have gone through that initial curve, which is a learning curve, which is an installation curve, which is an awareness curve, once you have gone through the cycle, you can make your own decision whether it's a technology worth investing in. So take baby steps instead of staying out of it because of the prohibitive cost.
Embrace it.
Right.
Somewhat may basically embrace GenAI to whatever extent that you can. Basically, that's what you're saying.
Just to end on a lighter
Small
note,
enterprise.
the costs are prohibitive only if you wish to develop a language model.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough. Understood. I want to take one more question and again request all of you to be brief about it. It is basically on role of GenAI. One question was on when we have AI, why do we need GenAI, and what is the leverage that it is going to provide, which AI does not? That is one question which I thought was, an interesting question. The second question was something around, there is a trend on shift left and extreme shift left testing, right? These models are going on well within the QE community. So how do you see GenAI disrupting such trends or supporting such trends? And what is the out-of-box thinking that GenAI can enable?
So I'll take the first question, the difference between traditional AI and generative AI. I think it's a very simple one to answer. See, it's an evolution of AI, you can say. The earlier AI, just to give some idea, the ones which you have in on your Amazon or on your Facebook is maybe trained on 1,000 models, 1,000 attributes, 2,000 attributes, even 100 attributes. The ones you are using for regression prediction and all are much trained on much lesser attributes. With generative AI and the way and I don't want to get into technical details, we have figured out the way of training your AI. Again, it is subject to the fact that now we have much more compute, much more storage thanks to cloud and all. We have figured out a way of taking that collective knowledge that we have as part of maybe that entire humanity. Now the models have become so powerful they can consume that knowledge. So the level or the degree of automation that they bring is at a completely different scale. So that's the difference between generative AI and traditional AI. If you keep the emotions and the technology out, and if you talk about the actual difference in terms of usability.
I think self-healing and self-learning also are the aspects that are there in GenAI.
And I think to answer the other question, Diksha, it cannot be looked at only testing, how it will help testing, how it will be help development. It has to be the entire cycle. That has to come in AI, and it will be a collective implementation.
Yeah.
We're out of time. We have overshot time by a couple of minutes. Ankit, with your permission, I'd like to close the session.
Please, Diksha, go ahead.
Yeah. So thank you so much, panelists, Naresh, Manish, Jairam, Rohit, Prerit, Alpana, and Ankit. Thank you so much. Fantastic insights. There are a lot of questions. I can understand the level of interest in this particular topic, and I hope to do more of this in the near future. But thank you very much for giving the time. Like I said, we'll try and summarize this into a small blog and put page as well. Ankit, thank you for the fantastic moderation. And thank you for staying back, listening end to end to this webinar. We will be uploading this on YouTube. I will be sharing the link with all of you. And Ankit mentioned about the AI guideline that nasscom has published. I put up that link on the chat window. Please feel free to download it. And I will see you soon on some other session.